The wind swept softly across the Wyoming prairie, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant pine. The sun hung low over the western mountains, painting the sky with shades of gold, amber, and crimson. Nathan Cole guided his chestnut horse along the lonely trail that led back to his ranch. 42 years old, broad-shouldered, and hardened by years of ranch work, Nathan had spent most of his life believing that a man could survive anything except loneliness. His wife had died 8 winters earlier from pneumonia, and their little daughter had followed her only months later after a fever no frontier doctor could cure. Since then, the old ranch house had remained painfully quiet. Every room echoed with memories. Every evening ended the same with Nathan eating supper alone while the fire crackled in silence. As the horse rounded a bend near the abandoned church road, Nathan noticed someone sitting beside the weathered fence. At first he thought it was an abandoned bundle of blankets. Then the figure moved. A young woman slowly lifted her head. She looked exhausted. Dust covered her faded blue dress, and her dark hair hung loosely around her face. She couldn't have been older than 26. She clutched a small cloth, bundled tightly against her chest, as though it contained everything she owned. Her face carried the unmistakable expression of someone who had cried until there were no tears left. Nathan gently pulled his horse to a stop. "You hurt, ma'am?" he asked. The woman hesitated before answering. "No." "You waiting for someone?" She stared toward the endless road stretching behind him. "No." Nathan climbed down from his horse. "You headed somewhere?" For several long seconds she remained silent. Then, barely above a whisper, she said the words that would forever change both of their lives. "I have nowhere left to go." Nathan looked into her tired eyes. He had seen grief before. He recognized it instantly. It was the same empty look he had carried for years after burying his family. He glanced toward the fading sun. "Funny," he finally replied with a faint smile. "I have an empty house." The woman blinked, unsure whether she had heard correctly. "I don't expect anything," she said carefully. "I can work. I don't want charity." Nathan nodded. "Good, because I don't believe in charity. I believe in neighbors." She studied him carefully, searching for signs of deception. Frontier life had taught her never to trust strangers. Kind men often proved dangerous after dark. "My name is Nathan Cole." She hesitated. "Emma." "Well, Emma, supper's probably getting cold." She remained frozen. Nathan climbed back onto his horse. "I'm heading home whether you come or not." He nudged the horse forward. After several steps, he heard quiet footsteps behind him. Emma was following. Neither of them spoke during the long walk to the ranch. The Cole ranch appeared just as darkness settled over the valley. The weathered, 2-story farmhouse stood proudly beneath enormous cottonwood trees. A wooden barn rested nearby, surrounded by fenced pastures where horses grazed peacefully. Smoke drifted from the chimney, left from the fire Nathan always kept burning even when no one else was there to enjoy its warmth. Emma stopped near the porch. "It's beautiful." Nathan looked at the house. "I stopped noticing years ago." Inside, the home was surprisingly clean. Everything rested exactly where it had been for years. A polished dining table, handmade quilts folded neatly over chairs, family photographs sat untouched on the fireplace mantel. Emma's eyes paused on one faded photograph. A smiling woman stood beside Nathan while holding a little blonde girl no older than 5. "They're your family?" Nathan quietly nodded. "My wife, Sarah, and your daughter, Lily." Emma noticed fresh flowers resting beneath the photograph. "You still bring them flowers?" "Every Sunday." She didn't ask any more questions. Nathan placed a cast-iron pot onto the table. "Beef stew." Emma smiled faintly. "I haven't had warm food in 3 days." Nathan quietly filled 2 bowls. She ate slowly at first, embarrassed by her hunger. Nathan pretended not to notice. After supper he showed her the upstairs guest room. "The bed's old. It looks wonderful. The window sticks. I've slept outside. The roof leaks a little during storms." Emma smiled for what seemed like the first genuine time. "I don't mind." Nathan tipped his hat. "Good night." As he reached the stairs, Emma softly called after him. "Mr. Cole." "Yes, thank you." Nathan paused only a moment. "You're welcome." That night neither of them slept well. Nathan lay awake downstairs, wondering whether inviting a complete stranger into his home had been foolish. Emma sat beside the bedroom window, staring at the stars. She hadn't expected kindness. Not anymore. Not after everything that had happened during the past year. Somewhere far away, coyotes howled across the prairie. For the first time in months, Emma wasn't afraid. Morning arrived with golden sunlight pouring across the ranch. Nathan was already outside repairing a broken fence. When Emma stepped onto the porch, "You rise early," she observed. "Cows don't care how late you sleep." She smiled. "What can I do?" Nathan looked surprised. "You really meant it. I told you, I work." He handed her a bucket. "The chickens need feeding." Within an hour Emma had fed the chickens, gathered fresh eggs, swept the porch, cleaned the kitchen, and started baking fresh bread using ingredients she found in the pantry. Nathan returned just before noon. The smell stopped him in his tracks. "You bake? My mother taught me." He laughed quietly. "I haven't smelled fresh bread in years." Over the following days, the quiet ranch slowly began to change. The empty rooms no longer echoed quite so loudly. The dining table held to plates instead of fresh flowers appeared in windows. Curtains were opened each morning. Emma hummed softly while working. Nathan found himself smiling more often than he had in nearly a decade. Neither spoke much about the past. Not yet, but both understood something important. Sometimes healing begins long before people find the courage to tell their stories. Still, not everyone in the valley welcomes strangers. One afternoon, Nathan rode into the nearby town for supplies. As he loaded sacks of flour into the wagon, Sheriff Thomas Bennett approached. "I heard you've got company." Nathan nodded. "A young woman. Word travels fast. It always does." The sheriff lowered his voice. "Folks say nobody knows where she came from." Nathan calmly secured another sack. "They don't know where I came from either." Thomas sighed. "I'm only saying. Be careful." Nathan looked him directly in the eyes. "I always am." Across the street, two rough-looking men watched Nathan leave town. One of them narrowed his eyes. "I know that woman." His companion frowned. "You sure? I'd recognize her anywhere." They climbed onto their horses. "If it's really her, somebody's been looking for her." Far behind Nathan's wagon, the two riders quietly followed the road toward the coal ranch. They never took their eyes off the distant farmhouse. Emma had escaped her past, or so she believed. She had no idea it had just found her again. The following morning, dawn bright and cool, with a gentle breeze rippling through the prairie grass, Emma had been living at the coal ranch for nearly 3 weeks, and for the first time in over a year, she woke without fear tightening her chest. The house that had once echoed with silence now carried the comforting sounds of daily life. Nathan was already outside splitting firewood, while Emma prepared breakfast, humming softly as biscuits baked in the old cast-iron oven. The scent of fresh bread drifted through the open windows, mixing with the crisp mountain air. Nathan smiled to himself. He had forgotten how much difference another person's presence could make. During breakfast, Emma noticed Nathan staring thoughtfully out the window. "What is it?" she asked. Nathan hesitated. "I saw fresh horse tracks near the south fence this morning." Emma's hands froze around her coffee cup. "Travelers?" Nathan slowly shook his head. "Maybe, or maybe someone watching." She forced a faint smile. "You're probably imagining things." "I've lived on this land for 30 years, Nathan replied calmly. "The prairie always tells a story." Neither spoke again until breakfast ended. Later that afternoon, Emma worked in the vegetable garden while Nathan repaired the barn roof. The peaceful silence was broken by the distant sound of galloping horses. Emma looked toward the horizon. Two riders appeared briefly along the ridge, before disappearing behind a line of cottonwood trees. A cold feeling settled deep inside her. She recognized one of the horses. It belonged to a man she prayed she would never see again. Without saying a word, she hurried inside the house. Nathan climbed down from the roof just as Emma shut the front door. "You saw them?" She nodded. "They've found me." Nathan removed his gloves. "Who are they?" Emma looked away. "I hoped I'd never have to tell anyone." Nathan waited patiently. Finally, she spoke. "My father died when I was 19. He owned a small piece of land near Silver Creek. After he passed away, a wealthy rancher named Silas Mercer claimed my father owed him money. He produced papers that no one had ever seen before. Were they real? I don't know." She swallowed hard. The judge believed him. Nathan frowned. So he took your land. He took everything. Emma's voice trembled. When I refused to marry his son Caleb, things became worse. Nathan's expression hardened. He wanted your land. And you. Emma nodded. When I escaped, Caleb swore he'd find me. Nathan looked toward the window where the distant hills shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. So the writers ... I think one of them was Caleb. Nathan quietly walked to the rifle hanging above the fireplace. Emma looked frightened. You don't have to get involved. Nathan carefully checked the rifle before setting it beside the door. The day you walked into this house, you became my responsibility. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me. Nathan met her eyes. Sometimes doing the right thing comes with risk. As evening settled over the ranch, the peaceful valley felt strangely different. Even the horses seemed restless. After supper, Nathan made one final round of the property before locking the barn. Near midnight, a horse whinnied loudly. Nathan was awake instantly. He quietly stepped onto the porch. 3 figures stood beyond the front gate. Moonlight revealed wide-brimmed hats and long coats. One rider called out, "We're looking for a woman." Nathan remained calm. "No women here but my late wife." The tallest rider laughed. "Don't play games, old man." Nathan rested one hand on the porch railing. "I've never enjoyed games." The rider urged his horse forward. "Her name's Emma." Nathan didn't blink. Never heard of her. Inside the house, Emma stood silently beside the upstairs window, barely breathing. She recognized the voice. Caleb Mercer. He hadn't changed. Neither had the hatred in his voice. Outside, Caleb studied Nathan carefully. "We know she's here." Nathan folded his arms. "You've ridden a long way to be wrong." Caleb smiled coldly. "We'll come back." Nathan's voice remained steady. "You do that." The riders turned their horses and disappeared into the darkness. Emma slowly walked downstairs. "They'll never stop." Nathan stared into the dying fire. "Neither will I." The next morning, Nathan rode into town before sunrise. Sheriff Thomas Bennett listened carefully as Nathan explained everything. Thomas sighed heavily. "Silas Mercer has powerful friends, so I've heard. He owns judges." Nathan nodded. "And deputies?" Thomas looked uncomfortable. "Some." Nathan leaned closer. "What about you?" The sheriff met his eyes. "I wear one badge." Nathan smiled slightly. "That's enough." Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Emma continued working despite her growing fear. She refused to spend another day hiding. As she carried water from the well, she noticed a small wooden box resting on the porch. No one had been there moments earlier. Inside lay a single dried black rose. Beneath it was a folded piece of paper. Emma slowly opened it. The message contained only 6 words. "You can't run forever. Come home." Her hands began shaking. Nathan returned an hour later. The moment he saw her face, he knew. She handed him the note. He quietly folded it. "They're trying to frighten you. It's working." Nathan tossed the note into the fireplace. "Good." Emma looked confused. "Good. If fear is all they've got left, they're weaker than they want you to believe." That evening, neighbors began arriving unexpectedly. Old Mrs. Wilson brought to pies. Jacob Miller offered extra hands if trouble came. The blacksmith promised fresh horseshoes and supplies. Even Sheriff Bennett stopped by after sunset. Emma looked around in disbelief. "They're helping me." Nathan smiled. "They're helping what's right." For the first time since fleeing her home, Emma realized something important. She was no longer alone. But miles away, inside the Grand Mercer ranch house, Caleb slammed his fist onto a heavy oak table. "I want her back." His father, Silas Mercer, calmly poured himself another drink. "You've become emotional. You don't understand." Silas smiled without warmth. "I understand perfectly." He opened a locked drawer and removed an old leather folder. Inside rested the original deed to Emma's father's land, along with another document, a handwritten letter, one Caleb had never seen before. Silas quietly placed it into the fire. The paper curled as flames consumed it. Caleb frowned. What was that? Silas watched the ashes drift upward. The only thing that could prove the ranch belongs to her. Caleb's eyes widened. So now ... Now, Silas interrupted. There's no evidence left. Neither man noticed an elderly ranch hand standing outside the open window. He had seen everything, and he had heard every word. The old man quietly stepped back into the darkness. For 40 years he had worked for the Mercer family. That night, For the first time in his life, he decided it was time to tell the truth. He saddled his horse and turned it toward Nathan Cole's ranch. The first rays of dawn spread across the Wyoming prairie, bathing the Cole ranch in soft golden light. Nathan stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the empty road disappear into the hills. Beside him, Emma wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. Neither of them spoke. After the threatening visit from Caleb Mercer, silence had taken on a different meaning. It was no longer peaceful. It was the quiet that came before a storm. Just after sunrise, the sound of a single horse echoed across the valley. Nathan instinctively reached for the rifle leaning beside the front door. An elderly ranch hand slowly rode into the yard. His gray beard was covered in dust, and his tired horse looked as though it had traveled through the night. "I don't come as an enemy," the old man called. Nathan lowered the rifle but remained cautious. "My name is Samuel Brooks," the stranger said. "I've worked for Silas Mercer for 40 years. Emma stepped onto the porch, her heart pounding. Samuel removed his hat. "Miss Emma, your father was an honest man." Tears instantly filled her eyes. Samuel climbed down from his horse and carefully reached inside his coat. From a leather pouch he removed several folded papers wrapped in oilcloth. "I knew one day Mercer would destroy the truth," he said. "So years ago, I secretly copied every document." Nathan unfolded the papers. Among them was a signed agreement proving Emma's father had fully repaid every debt. Another document exposed Silas Mercer's forged claim to the land. Finally, there was a handwritten letter from the town lawyer confessing that he had been pressured into approving false paperwork. Nathan looked at Samuel in disbelief. "This changes everything." Samuel nodded. "If those papers reach the judge, Emma gets her ranch back." Before anyone could say another word, a rifle shot cracked through the morning air. The bullet struck the porch railing only inches from Nathan. "Down!" he shouted. Emma and Samuel dropped to the floor as more gunfire echoed across the ranch. Caleb Mercer and 4 armed riders charged through the front gate. Caleb pointed toward the house. "Bring her to me." Nathan fired one warning shot into the air. "This ranch isn't yours." The riders continued advancing. Within moments, Sheriff Thomas Bennett arrived with several townsmen who had ridden hard after receiving Nathan's message the previous evening. Jacob Miller, old Mrs. Wilson's 2 grown sons, the blacksmith. Half the valley had come. The riders suddenly found themselves badly outnumbered. Sheriff Bennett stepped forward. "Caleb Mercer, throw down your weapon." Caleb laughed. "You've got no proof." Nathan calmly held up the leather folder. "I think we do." For the first time, fear crossed Caleb's face. He urged his horse forward, trying to snatch the papers from Nathan's hands. Before he reached the porch, his frightened horse stumbled in a prairie dog hole. Caleb crashed into the dirt. The folder remained safely in Nathan's hands. The remaining riders looked at one another. One by one, they lowered their rifles. Sheriff Bennett placed Caleb under arrest. Hours later, everyone gathered inside the county courthouse. The judge carefully examined every document Samuel had saved. Witnesses testified. Samuel told the entire truth. The town lawyer's written confession was read aloud. Even several former Mercer ranch hands admitted they had watched Silas forge signatures years earlier. When the courtroom finally fell silent, the judge removed his glasses. "Emma Harper," she stood slowly. "This court recognizes you as the lawful owner of the Harper Ranch." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "The Mercer claim is hereby declared fraudulent." A wave of relief swept through the courtroom. Nathan quietly smiled. Justice had finally arrived. Outside the courthouse, reporters from nearby towns hurried to write the remarkable story of the mysterious woman who had lost everything, only to regain it because one lonely cowboy had opened his door. Weeks later, Emma stood on the porch of her family's restored ranch. Workers repaired broken fences while neighbors helped rebuild the old barn. Nathan rode over carrying fresh pies from Mrs. Wilson. Emma laughed. "She still thinks neither of us knows how to cook." Nathan grinned. "She's probably right." They sat together on the porch steps as the sun slowly settled behind the mountains. After a long silence, Emma finally spoke. "You remember the day we met?" Nathan nodded. "You whispered that you had nowhere left to go, and you said ... Nathan smiled. "Funny, I have an empty house." Emma looked toward the horizon. It wasn't really empty. Nathan frowned. "What do you mean?" "It was waiting." He looked at her quietly. "For what?" Emma reached for his hand. "For someone who needed it as much as you did." Nathan's eyes filled with tears. Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, the entire valley gathered beneath blooming cottonwood trees. Sheriff Bennett stood beside the preacher. Jacob Miller adjusted his best hat. Mrs. Wilson cried before the ceremony even began. Nathan Cole and Emma Harper exchanged simple vows beneath the wide Wyoming sky. No grand decorations, no expensive celebration, only honest people, honest promises, and a love that had grown from kindness instead of chance. The lonely ranch was lonely no more. Laughter once again echoed through its rooms. Fresh flowers returned to every window. The dining table was never set for one again. Years later, children raced across the front yard while Nathan repaired fences and Emma baked bread with little hands helping beside her. Travelers often stopped at the ranch asking for water or directions. Every visitor was greeted with kindness, because Nathan and Emma never forgot that one act of compassion had changed two lives forever. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't finding someone to save. Sometimes it's opening your door ... and discovering they save you too. Thank you for listening to this Old West story. If you enjoyed this journey with Nathan and Emma, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment sharing your favorite moment, and turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming frontier tale. Your support helps keep these stories alive.